We have a whole bunch of wider range of lasers here. So we have LA5, but that's a UHP, so it is the really high-powered one. I forget how many milliwatts, maybe 165 milliwatts. Here's an NGAL, Next Generation Aim Laser. Both are by L3. We have a MAWL-C1 Plus, which is a civilian model, and we have the MAWL-DA, which is the full power one. And then this is a Steiner SPIR. Right now, light conditions, there is no moon, only stars. There's some ambient light from the city over there, but other than that, not a whole lot of light to speak of. So we will do some comparisons. Finally, so we are now looking at the UHP. This is a UHP by L3. It's the LA5. Let me change my focus back. So this is low power, eye safe infrared designator. And then here is the infrared designator and illuminator. So let's start 25 yards right there to that tree or telephone pole. That's about 25 yards. And then 200 yards is to that tree. I can tighten the beam. .400 yards is out there. Now, when I'm changing the illuminator, I have to turn this head to tighten the beam. It's very slow. Now, I can do this. There is a little cap which makes the laser from tight to wide flood very quickly. Now let's go to full power. This is the full power designator. So 25 yards, 200 yards, 400 yards, and 600 yards. That building is about 5, so a little past the building is 600. And then with the illuminator, okay, 25 yards. And then here's a wide flood cap. You can see all the little distortion and noise from the laser. If you tighten the beam, it kind of goes away. But if you widen the beam out, it looks really bad. See that? So you have to spend a lot of time making it just right. But now, the illuminator is a solid beam. Okay, if I widen out the beam, there's a lot of distortion, a lot of artifacts in the image, or the beam. It's just the nature of the lens. Each one is different, so they're not all going to be the same. Some are worse, some are better, but most of them are pretty bad. So that's about 600 yards, 500 yards, 400 yards to that tree line, and 25 yards. The MAWL-DA. So the MAWL-DA has much better switches. Oh, let me get the LA5. So the LA5 has a selector right here to select between aim low, illuminate low, dual low, and then aim high, and illuminate high, and then dual high. So it's a lot of selecting. And then you have your visibles down here, visible. And then the activation button is here, and you have little caps, covers to do that. With the MAWL, you simply switch off visible, it's going to be a green laser, and then infrared, that's it. Once you're here, you only have to move this little switch into 3 positions: close, medium, far. Now let's see what that looks like. Okay, on close, it's hard to tell, but close range you can see the illumination. Now there's 2 buttons on here. The back button is a lower power, the front button is higher, slightly higher power. So you see how much brighter the close range illuminator is. Now if I want to switch to medium, all I do is slide that switch forward, and I have the flood, and I have this real tight, even, clean beam illuminator with the pointer in the middle. Low, slightly higher, low, high. 25 yards with medium mode, close range mode. That's it. All I have to do is flip a switch, and I can go from close range to medium range. So if I need to throw more light downrange, see how surgical that is? I can't see what's there. All I do is that, and I can throw light. Illuminator. Very simple, very easy, one-handed. 25 yards, 200 yards, 400 yards, 600 yards. Now that's close range. We're going to do medium range. 25, 200, 400 yards, and then 500, 600 yards, all the way out there. Now, if I don't want all of this extra light, I can put it in long range mode, and I only get the tight hotspot. I don't get the extra flood around it. So 25 yards, 200 yards, 400 yards, 500 yards, 600 yards-ish. If I only want laser, I just push the back button. Now only in the long range mode can you isolate just the designator, but this is the full power DA. So there's no really need to change any selectors. You just have one little sliding switch, and you can switch between close range and medium range, which will pretty much get you to do everything you want it to do. And if you need to go long range, then you slide this, push the detent button down, and you go into long range mode. Now, we're going to compare that to the civilian MAWL. So, I mean, close range mode. So, civilian MAWL, close range, high power. No real difference. Okay? Low power, low power. I don't really notice the difference, low power, with the MAWL-DA versus the MAWL-C1. Now we're going to switch to medium range. Well, that's bright. Not bad. 25 yards, 25 yards. The MAWL-DA is brighter. Let's go 200 yards. So first we'll do this civilian. That's civilian, eye safe. This is the MAWL-DA. You can see the hot spot is bigger. 400 yards, civilian. And this is the medium range illuminator with the tight hot spot. So there's the MAWL-DA and the civilian right next to it. Very usable. And then we'll go 500 yards. It's that building. Civilian, MAWL-DA, C1 plus. Very usable. Now we'll go into extended range mode, or long range mode I should say. Civilian, MAWL-DA. MAWL-DA is brighter, but the civilian one is very usable. 200 yards, 400 yards, 25 yards. Okay, now we will compare that to the NGAL. Low power mode. Here's low power on the NGAL. Pointer. Where is the selector? There we go. So on the NGAL, in order for me to change the illuminator size, I have to turn this little knob back here. Button. There we go. Now this is just eye safe mode. 25 yards, 200 yards, 400 yards, 500 yards. Now I'll go full power. The pointer. So 25 yards, 200 yards, 400 yards, 500 yards. Now here's the illuminator. So this is how big the illuminator can be, and here is how small the illuminator can be. Okay, so I can leave it in a tight beam, or I can throw this there, just like the LA5. There's a little diffuser cap which makes the beam really wide. So here's wide, and if I flip the cap away, tight hotspot. But if I can also dial it if I want to. So 25 yards, 200 yards, 400 yards, 500 yards. Now, if I want more light, I can dial it down. Okay, let's compare that to the MAWL long-range illuminator. I want to make the MAWL, it's about the same size. Okay, and let's do dual. Okay, the NGAL is not zeroed, so we'll switch these off. So similar size to the MAWL-DA. MAWL-DA is brighter at the same size. You can see the MAWL-DA, or this is the NGAL, MAWL-DA at 500 yards. 400 yards, MAWL-DA is brighter. Okay, let's go back to the LA5. Turn on. Eesh. So make the beam similar size. That's about the same size. So LA5 is more powerful, but look at the beam. You see the artifacts? It's not very clean. NGAL has a clean illuminator, but it's not as good as the MAWL-DA. And this is full power, right? Yeah, full power. This is the LA5 UHP. This is the NGAL. And then here's the MAWL-DA UHP LA5 MAWL-DA. And then just real quick, NGAL. Then just to show difference, here is the SPIR. This is an LED illuminator. I think this is in high. Nope, that was low. That's high. Okay, high and low. High, low. All right, so 5x magnifier. What's going on? Here's the NGAL at about 500 plus yards. Here's the MAWL-DA. Much better. And then here is the UHP, right? What's going on? There we go. UHP. Ugh. Awful. Just awful. LA5 is terrible. Let's go back. This is MAWL-DA and NGAL. NGAL is dimmer. Not as good. And then just to compare, where's my SPIR? SPIR. Very good. Let me open the beam. Oh, are those cows? Those are cows over there. So that tree right there is about 1,000 yards. Alright, let's get more illumination. MAWL-DA. Easily see cows. 1,000 yards. MAWL-DA. Now I'm going to switch to MAWL C1 Plus Civilian. Wow. It helps that the cows are very high contrast against the hillside, but that's pretty impressive. Now we will go to the NGAL. Oops, not aiming, no. What's going on? Oh, there we go. So the NGAL has a little bit better feature because you can turn and dial the illuminator down tighter, but at the same size it's not as bright as the DA or the C1 Plus. Well, it's brighter than C1 Plus, but not as useful. And this is the UHP. Ugh. You kind of lose some of the cows in the distortion of the beam. I can tighten the beam, which would help, but then it just washes everything out and it's not very useful. That's a little bit better, but you're spending a lot of time fiddling with this thing. So that's the difference. So I'm going to adjust the brightness down so you can see what's inside that beam. You can see the house or the building, okay? So that's a MAWL-DA. Now let's compare that to the LA5. There's the LA5 illuminator. Well, it's really small. It's really big. Or small. Can you adjust this brightness a little bit? Where's the building? You can't really see what's inside that building. Okay, now you can see the building. So that's 500 yards. There's 200 yards. 400 yards, and then 25 yards. This is just the one problem with the LA5. The illuminator is like a petri dish. Okay, so we are looking at the LA5 UHP. I have to turn this stupid thing so you can see the artifacts in the distortion in the beam. That is from the lens that's focusing the laser illuminator. Okay, similar size. Okay, now we are looking at the building. Can you see the building inside? Yes, you can see the building. Okay, now compare that to the NGAL. Where's the NGAL? Here it is. See, it's not as bright. It's a nice clean beam, but it's not as good as the MAWL, and it costs more. Illuminator the same size. There's the MAWL. There's the NGAL. And this for comparison, here's the UHP. Ugh. Look at that. That is awful. I think something up close. There's 200 yards. The MAWL, LA5, and then the NGAL. Yards out to those bushes right there. And then 25 yards. The really telling difference is the building at 500 yards. Big difference between all those. This is the LA5, and here's the MAWL. So hopefully you can see the difference. All right, we're looking at a 5x magnifier on the PVS-14 with the UHP. Then here's the MAWL. Oh, let's go MAWL. There we go. Okay, I'd adjust the brightness on the camera a little bit. UHP. Looking at a 500-yard house, building. Where'd it go? There it is. And then we're going to point the NGAL at it. So give me a moment. Oh. There's the NGAL. It's just not as bright. So I locked the auto exposure so you can see the MAWL and the NGAL. It's not as bright. Now with the NGAL, I can tighten the beam to right about there and get more light on the subject. The MAWL cannot do that.
So I'm actually pretty impressed. ATN PS22, but I'm looking at it with an Aurora. So that's the NGAL. And then where's the mall? Here's the mall. Boom. There's the mall. Really good. That building's 500 yards away. And then we're gonna grab, where'd the PEC? There it is, LA5. Okay, let's aim this thing. That's the PEC 15 LA5 UHP. Look how ugly that illuminator is. It's awful.